Hi, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to Turn Digi, the online marketing event where we promote entrepreneurs, promote rising talent, and also gender equality. I'm Jo Juliana Turnbull, and this is our second Turn Digi event. So thank you, everyone that has joined before. We had obviously 16 speakers from 8 different countries joining on April 30th. Today we have 12, I'm just moving, 12 speakers across 3 different countries. A lot of them they run their own business. A lot of them also from the great Women in Tech SEO group that Arij has set up. And I want to thank everyone for taking the time to share the actionable and insightful tips. Each speaker will have 10 minutes, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. So my name is Jo Juliana Turnbull, also known as SEO Jo Blogs. We're live streaming from Barcelona. I'm an SEO consultant, but also a growth marketer at Authoritas. Some of you have maybe come to Tea Time SEO. You can still come today at 4 p.m. as well, British summertime. I've been working in SEO for about 12 years now, actually. I've worked agency side, client side, and freelance. And I've also worked around the world in Sydney and also on the West Coast in Perth, Australia. So you may have seen me as well from Search London. I've been organizing that with Tim Sheed. We will have another event. We turned 9 years old early this year. It seems like a longer time ago than that. And we will have another event, but of course it will be online. I'm also an organizer for Seda Digital, and have been since 2012. So today, this morning, we have 3 great speakers. We have Luke Carthy, Faisal Anderson, and Paige Hobart. So Turn Digi, as I mentioned, it really was set up. I set it up a couple of months ago because we saw many events that were cancelled, but there weren't, or postponed, but there weren't any events that actually were replacing them. And what I felt was, as myself, as a freelancer, as a contractor, there's not a lot in this current climate supporting those that are running their own business or ones that have that they're actually self-employed. So I'm really happy today to have these 3 speakers talk in our morning session. We'll then have a break, and then we have 3 more sessions later on. If you haven't received an email, please email me at SEOJoBlogs or tweet at me. But please also tweet at Turn Digi. We will be posting some of the sessions throughout the day on Turn Digi channel, and also we'll be sending up a follow-up email to all those who registered. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Luke, who's going to be talking to us about 3 new data points you need to measure in Google Analytics. I'll just stop sharing my screen and let Luke share his.
All right, so I'm going to ask that classic presentation question. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, all right, awesome. All right, cool. So first thing I want to do is go and close this door because it's about to go off because shopping's just turned up. As you can hear, there's like kids and stuff screaming. So
and please leave your questions in the chat as well afterwards. Luke will be able to answer all your Q&As later.
I will do. I'm going to sit back down again. Okay, so first things first, right? No results found. Let's talk about that. So I'm not talking about 404s here, but I will in a second. But what I want to talk about now is no results found on site search, right? So you're in a situation, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's a brochure site, whether you're looking at real estate, whatever it is. If you have a website with an internal search engine, you need to make sure that you're tracking results that are poor, especially if a lot of people are searching for these things right now. Now, of course, we're in a situation. Yes, we're like 60 seconds in and I'm going to drop a reference to the pandemic and coronavirus. It's going to happen. It's all we can think about. But what I want to say is, like, people are searching different now. People are looking for things in a different context. They don't necessarily know what they want. So I have a client in the world of automotive, and they're looking, the things that they're looking for right now are completely different to what they would have bought before. People have got search for COVID, which is a completely new keyword compared to like 3 or 4 months ago. Are you tracking no results found on your site search queries? And you absolutely need to do that in Google Analytics. So how to do that briefly, just to kind of walk you through that, is what you need to do first is build an event, and you may need some developer help here. So whenever you're firing a search query in your site and you have those no results, what you can absolutely do is fire an event to Google Analytics to say, hey, someone has searched for this particular keyword and has found no results. Then you can put that in a custom report, build it in amongst whatever reports you want, and start to go in and fix those issues there. But this is one of the big things that gets in the way of conversion: usability, performance. This is like a big thing that you need to go away and fix. 404 pages. We of course we're going to come across to it. So 404s, big things. We know they're a pain in the backside when it comes to a multiple touch points, whether we're talking about SEO, whether we're talking about e-commerce, user experience. Like, it's a big deal. But of course, 404 pages, as you know, you can go away and look at them in Search Console and Ahrefs and whatever your flavor of SEO tool is. But these 404 results are only going to be reporting based upon SEO impact, typically. I don't want to talk about SEO impact purely. I want to talk about user experience and how you can basically improve your user experience online. So if you're one of these people who believes that this is a good thing, where even in the world of e-commerce, if you have a product that's out of stock, you take it off the website. No, stop. So you can build yeah, exactly. Come on, my son's outside. So what you can absolutely do is take care of something and build a report like this, a 404 error log. And again, how you do this is if you have a page title. For a lot of websites, the page title is static if you have a 404 error. Now, Google Analytics out of the box will record the page title. So what you can absolutely do is take that static page title that's firing on your 404 page and capture it. Build yourself a custom report like this. And then down the left-hand side, you've got the URLs, but more importantly, you've got the number of hits, the number of users, the number of view users, and the number of new sessions, and whatever metrics you want to apply to this. So you can see 404 errors by user impact rather than SEO impact, which typically is tied a lot more so to user performance than directly SEO. And this is a big deal in the world of e-commerce. All right. So error messages. This is one I'm particularly passionate about, and I love this one. This one's pretty cool. First one's first. This is one I've particularly built, and it's about cart abandonment. So by capturing error messages in Google Analytics, of course, it allows you to see the errors that customers and users and whatever it is are on your site are experiencing. So here's just 4 examples, right? And one of the key error messages that I'm seeing for a client is, hey, unrecognized username, unrecognized password. Have you forgotten your password? Now, that could be a legit issue, but if you've got a lot of people that are seeing this particular problem, then maybe it's something you need to fix. Not technically, but it could be user experience. Again, it could be the kind of thing that you need to address to make it easier to understand. Is the copy clear in the error message? Is there something that you can do to prevent this error message from firing in the first instance, for example? These are all the sort of things you can talk about. Then when you think about reporting these things to the board and getting priority and your internal meetings, or your remote meetings, as is the case now, you can bring context and picture and justification as to why these things need fixing, especially if you see a really big spike in the number of error messages in a particular date range. So, here's the report again. This particular client of mine, sorry, unrecognized username or password. Have you forgotten your password? Receives 2,000 hits over the space of like 2 or 3 months. This is a particularly big deal. And maybe begs the question, maybe they should have a guest checkout, or maybe they should make the login process easier. But by having this insight in Google Analytics, you can start to build that picture, build that case, and implement those improvements and changes. Okay, so logged in status. How many reasons have I given you now? I've got a feeling it's more than 3. This is like a bonus one, I think. Anyway, logged in status. I love this one. If you have a website that allows you to log in or authenticate yourself as a user, it's really powerful to be able to segment your users that are not logged in. versus are logged in, for a multitude of reasons. But one that I particularly love is heat maps, because so many businesses will look at heat maps as a collective. You look across all your visitors over a certain date range, or you'll look at certain devices, for example, or certain pages. But have you ever thought about looking at heat maps by whether they're authenticated or not? Now, typically logged in users, they know your site, they're clearly a loyal customer, they may have purchased from you before. They're a lot more, I guess, in the habit, or they've got habits that they have to use your site, versus someone that's brand new is going to look at your site maybe slightly differently. How are they different, and how can you better those experiences for new people? Equally, how can you better those experiences for existing users? So by being able to segment, that's really quite powerful and allows you to expand and really funnel down and things like that. Now, I've only had 10 minutes, so I'd love to talk to you about how you can go away and actually build all this stuff in Google Analytics. But what I'm going to say is, hey, there's some resources. I haven't got them in here, but reach out to me. They're online. Simo Ohava is a legend. Go and take a look at some of his stuff as well. It's pretty cool. If you like the sort of stuff I talk about, I have a series of webinars, Let's Talk Shop. I talk like this, I sit like this. It's in the same room. You can see it here. And we just basically vibe out about e-commerce problems, solutions. I rant, I give you ideas, and it helps me during quarantine, and gives you some good stuff as well. So yeah, go and check that out. I've been Luke Carthy. You can find me here on Twitter, LinkedIn, my website. And yeah, thank you. Any questions?
That was great. Thank you, Luke. Yes, we do, from Aman. Aman asks, what do we do when there is a subfolder which is showing a 404, but it's not indexed in Google, and it's not available in the sitemap as well? What should we be doing for these types of pages?
Okay, so it's not available in Google. I got that first one. What was the second one, sorry?
It's not indexed in Google, and it's not in the sitemap.
Okay, but it's a 404, right?
But it's a sub, yeah, it's showing 404 and it's in a subfolder.
Okay. So what I'd say is you need to, yeah, I think this is someone trying to get me, right? This is like a trick question. But what I will say, maybe you need to 301 this, potentially. But 301 redirect this to a better destination, because if it's not in the index, it's because it's 404s. And there was another thing that I know Joe mentioned and I've already forgotten, but yeah, if it's not in the index, it's because it's 404. So there's clearly a problem. You need to either build that 404 report I spoke about to try and see how much of a problem it is. But from an SEO's point of view, just redirect that thing. Send it to its next best destination. Make that happen. Okay,
good. Yeah. Thank you. So basically, yes, it's not indexed in Google, and also it wasn't available in the sitemap. That's what. So cool. That's great. Thank you. And I also just want to say hello to everyone that's joined: Francesco, Yolanda, Yogi, Orit, Arij, Luke, Stuart, Adrian, so many people, Lucy, Ellen, Marco, Azim, Naomi. So many people for joining us today. Okay, Lucy has a question. There are a couple of different ways to implement event tracking. What do you think is the easiest way for someone who is not a developer or a techie SEO? All right.
Well, firstly, hey, Luce. Hi. I know you. You can see me pointing at the screen. I know who you are. All right. So for the easiest way, it's got to be Google Tag Manager. I love that thing. It's brilliant. And again, Google Tag Manager kind of bridges the gap, right? It's not, it can be super techie for sure. It can be as geeky and as techy as you want it to be, but it can also be really approachable. So Google Tag Manager is really, really powerful. And again, Simo, I hope I'm pronouncing his name wrong because I say it like all the time. But Simo Ohava is an absolute legend. But if you go to his site, he's got some brilliant walkthroughs. But yes, events tracking, absolutely. Google Tag Manager is the easiest way to get that plugged in. Okay, that's Simo Harver, so S-I-M-O. Oh my God. Yeah. Are you pronouncing it right? And I've pronounced it wrong.
I don't know. I'm just going to share in the chat.
All right. Well, you can tell you what. Let me do this. I'm gonna take over for a second again, because I just want to make sure that I'm giving this guy credit. Right. Hold on. This has never been done before. Has anyone ever shared their screen twice? I don't know. Let's do it.
Or
Share
you can do
screen.
it in a private chat, and then we can just copy and paste it across.
Or that, yeah, that makes a lot more sense, and it means I don't turn full terrorist on Turn Digi. So yeah, probably a good idea. But yeah, I'll reach out to people and links and stuff. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, just message it here. Can you see? And then you can put in the.
Okay, so
Put it
Azim's
there.
right. I pronounce it Ahava. Okay. The guy, he's a legend. Just Google Tag Manager and Harvard, like Simo's there. He's a dude. It's cool.
Google check. Okay, fine. We will do that. Oh, it means love in Hebrew, so you could probably get away with coming in. Simon love. Thank you, Orit. Good to know. Didn't know that. Well, that's great. You have loads of tips. So your slides, will they be available on the slideshare as well?
Is that a question? Yeah,
If
yeah,
you want to share them, this is
yeah. If they're helpful, I mean, literally, it's like 6 slides, man. It's not a fat lot to go off. But if you want them, then hell yeah, you can have them.
okay. Well, thank you very much. And if you, that's great. You can obviously continue to join us while Faisal gets his slides ready for his talk. We'll just, you can just, if you share your screen, then I'll add it into the stream.
Right, there we go. Can you see my screen? Good.
You can.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Well, we'll leave it over to you. And thank you again, Luke, for your top tips. And if you all are enjoying the session, like the video and subscribe to Turn Digi YouTube channel. Little plug there, I know, but we love having you.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, really excited to go through this one. So we're just going to be talking about WordPress and what to do about it. Because, so just quickly about me, I'm a technical SEO consultant. I actually started as a developer. And then even when I moved over to SEO, I did a lot of work with WordPress. WordPress is amazing. We've had some really good times together, done a lot of fun things, done a lot of dev work, worked on big sites and small, from local to enterprise, that use WordPress as well. They do indeed use WordPress. If you're surprised with global brands using WordPress, but they do. But the main problem with WordPress is that it uses so many different facets to do lots of different things, when really it's just a CMS, but people tend to use it for absolutely everything. And the problem with using something for absolutely everything is that it's not really designed to do those things. It's more of an extension of what it can do, and that way it doesn't perform the best job, especially at scale. So when I'm thinking of WordPress, when I have a client that approaches me wanting to implement it now, I sort of go by 3 absolute rules. So the first one is using less plugins, because people tend to use tons of plugins, but that means you have to update them for security reasons. It clogs up your critical rendering path, which we'll talk about in a bit, meaning the site's slower to render. Also, most themes are pretty terrible. If we're doing a new site implementation, or we say like get a developer to make a really custom lean one rather than what you can buy on like Evento Market and stuff. We'll talk about more about that. And then also speed, which obviously there's been a lot of talks about speed, but I'm going to give some like more specific tips that I haven't seen out there, especially with WordPress. So yeah, I would always say, like with 3 laws, is have less plugins, don't use most of the themes that are out there, make sure they follow a couple of guidelines, which I'll give you, and make sure they're fast. And I guess the absolute golden rule is just use WordPress less. Just use it for what it's meant to do, which is formatting and posting posts, which is maybe not giving WordPress enough credit. It's an incredible tool, but because it's open source, there's so many different developers, so many different heads trying to, too many cooks in one, it makes it difficult to work with. So, on the point of using less plugins, I'd say that most plugins are really not needed. This, as I said, it lengthens the critical rendering path if you're using lots of plugins. In other words, you're loading so many new scripts that tends to slow down the loading of a site. And speed is so important for our CRO as well as our SEO. And also, with lots more scripts comes more security risk. WordPress is particularly vulnerable to a lot of security exploits, just because there's such a large code base that it's open source and for everyone to view, but also with individual plugins, you're working with individual teams, they may not be security experts, etc. So I'd say, like with plugins that you tend to need in terms of category, use things like Forms plugins, a security plugin. I like iThemes a lot, and speed, but don't use loads of speed plugins. I'd say W3C is probably the best one, coupled with Cloudflare, especially for like smaller sites. If you can, Cloudflare is a content delivery network. That's a lot of cool extra features, which we'll talk about. There's another one called Auto Optimize, but again, we'll go through the speed section later. But basically, the point is use less plugins, and also like SEO plugins. Sorry if you love Yoast. I don't mind Yoast; it's pretty cool. But to be honest, it doesn't have many of the features that we need, especially if we're doing larger sites. And to be honest, it just adds a lot of bloat. So, for example, like it has new schema and structured data features, which, in all honesty, I haven't fully tested. But looking at it, it doesn't look like it has the whole package that we need for many of the reasons that we need structured data for. So you might as well use the header footer plugin, which is a free plugin. It just allows you to insert stuff into the header and do it that way if you have a smaller site. And obviously, if you're doing it in bulk, there's better plugins as well that allow you to insert into the header at scale. There's no advantage to using like the online preview tool, like the SERP preview tool. You've got online tools for that. You've also got Screaming Frog, which can do it. Interlinking suggestions, which is also a feature of Yoast. Don't worry about that. Use Screaming Frog custom extraction, because what you can do, if you played around with the auto scheduler, which you can access by going to File and Auto Schedule, you can actually load a preferences file that you saved with Screaming Frog that includes your custom extraction set. And then every time you crawl the site, you can find those linking opportunities with particular words and regex. You don't need to know too much regex. You can just look for particular words. And that's one, a lot faster, and two, you're not using a big old plugin for it. I don't know, on their site, which they say one of the features is faster indexing. That's nonsense. That doesn't make any sense. Things like content updating as well. Like this is more a problem, I'd say, with your content plan. I'm not necessarily a content strategist, but I'd say when you're developing a content plan, you should have already planned when you need to do content updates. Yoast says that it tries to warn you when content has been updated in a while, but to be honest, that should be within your content plan already if you're developing a good bit of content. And also some content just doesn't need to be updated if it's for the purpose of link building or otherwise, if it's more like content marketing. And then a couple of other things here as well. But basically, the point is you can use header footer plugin. If you're doing redirects, use htaccess, because not all sites are just on one WordPress instance, for example, and some actually are on multiple, or we have different CMSs for the same site. Nightmare, but that is really popular, especially with enterprise level clients. And yeah, like there's this download focus keywords feature, which is kind of cool, but you can just use Search Console a lot easier. Appreciate we're going through time here, so just going to go through this. But yeah, image optimization plugins, don't use them. They're just bloat. Like they're really cool with the technology that they can do, but actually what's a much better way is to do it manually, because one, you get to lower file sizes, and two, it's a lot less processing on your CMS. Like it's just not supposed to be there. So I would say use Photoshop first. If you're optimizing your images, and use the safe web feature, knock down the quality a bit as much as you can without losing too much. Use a free tool called File Optimizer, which you can download, completely open source, and it's amazing. And also you can use Tiny PNG and Tiny JPEG, which are again free, and you can get those images down below the 100 kilobyte recommended limit for download size. One quick tip, if you're trying to do this with a client that has many different websites and they have a team of, say, designers that aren't really sort of new age and hipsters, they're just sort of like general employees that don't really understand like modern technology, you can actually set up custom notices within WordPress so that whenever they go to upload an image, it comes up with a notice saying, please, can you do X, Y, and Z and follow this procedure before uploading any images? And that way you can get them in the habit of doing it. And I did that with a client and it actually worked most of the time, which is pretty interesting. As I said, themes are mostly pretty crap. In an ideal scenario, WordPress themes, you wouldn't even use WordPress as a front end. You'd use something like WP2 static, which is quite cool. It produces the static front end. And if you want to avoid hosting fees, if you're using a smaller site, especially like a brochureware site, you can use GitHub Pages to host everything for free. And also use Cloudflare to have it on a CDN. You can also use React.js and Gatsby, which pulls from WordPress using something called a REST API. So you can just pull and push data to it, which is really awesome. So you don't need to be using a WordPress front end. Pre-rendering, I'm not going to go too much into it, but basically this is where you produce like a cached static version of a page for Googlebot and not necessarily for your users. And that's something called dynamic rendering. Luke has a good blog post on that, so I'd check that out. He talks about pre-render IO and a pretty good setup with WordPress. avoid animations. I appreciate the irony here with my presentation having really bad animations at the moment. But yeah, animations just slow things down. That's all you need to know. All these different like site builders, they just lead to a bloated document object model. So your pages get full of code you don't need that slows down your pages, and also adds more security risk. And yeah, as I said, get a super clean custom coded one if you can. If not, I quite like GeneratePress and Astra. They're pretty good. Like, they're not the best by any means, but they're pretty lightweight. So that means less code bloat. In terms of speed, like obviously there's so many different talks on speed, but I just want to go through the general process of how I'd approach it, and also some tips you might not have heard of before. So if you're doing speed, always, of course, first test, create a plan, think about hosting, caching, minification, image optimization, and lazy loading. These are sort of the main things I do with WordPress, at least. For testing, like I'd actually say, rather than using things like PageSpeed Insights, etc., I'd use a CLI. Or if you're a bit more savvy with command line, you can use speed test, which gives you a lot more easier of data handling. So if you're working with a large site, you can export all of your files pretty quickly, format them how you want, get them across to who it needs to go to a lot faster. Faster tests, so you're not queuing for others, and you have a lot more control of exactly what you're testing and how you're testing. Obviously, if you can't use a CLI, use things like byte check to test how fast your server is. It tells you about the time to first byte, which is when your server responds to a request. That's a really good thing to first do, because if your server is taking ages to respond to download your content, that's obviously bad in the first place. You can't speed that up too much, so it's better to have a good, strong server set up. PageSpeed Insights and JT Metrics, you know about those sort of good testing tools that you can use that are completely free. Chrome DevTools as well is really awesome. It has the Lighthouse feature, but more so it has the network and performance tabs in Chrome Developer Tools, which gives you some really interesting insights, which we'll go into in a bit. For hosting, use VPS if you can. There's a cool course that on Udemy, which I learned how to host WordPress websites on VPS, which is pretty good. And you can choose a server closest to your target audience. If you look in Google Analytics by geolocation, you can see where your closest audience is and host your website there, and that means for faster downloading. In terms of other hosting companies I've used, SiteGround and Flywheel are pretty good. Obviously, I'm talking about sort of smaller sites. If you're a freelancer, say, those are pretty good options for customer service. And also Flywheel allows you to do a one-click transfer hosting to client, because I don't know if you ever tried to offboard a client, but it's an absolute nightmare. But with Flywheel, it's pretty easy. Caching. So caching, we all know what caching is. It's sort of generating a static version of your page or downloading assets onto the client's computer so that they can load the page faster. But Cloudflare is really awesome, especially some of its features such as Railgun. So if you're running a site that's very news heavy or has lots of quickly updated content, so it could be a product listing page, could be a news site, Railgun allows you to cache those pages, whereas before they couldn't be, because obviously they're not static pages. I don't know exactly how it does this, but it's very smart, and it works really, really well. So check out that feature. It is on the free version, I believe. If you're not on shared hosting, which you really shouldn't be, so shared hosting is where your website is spread across multiple different servers, use database caching, because this basically just caches SQL queries and requests, so that it makes the site a whole lot faster. In terms of minification and concatenation, the ideal scenario really should be we're not using WordPress to do this. What you should do is work out with your development team how to combine most of your scripts into a singular file. It sounds counterintuitive, but that generally does really work well, especially with things like CSS and JS. Just having one or two files loading on your page is an absolute deal breaker. But if you can't, one thing I notice is that a lot of sites don't use the keep alive header. So if any file is requested, such as resource, it has to make an open and close request each time. With keep alive, you just need to make one request from one server to gather all the files on that same server. So it just speeds things up a lot. It's kind of like rather than just grabbing one thing at a time, you're grabbing multiple. Auto-optimize is also a good thing to do things like concatenation if you don't want to go the route of having your team do it. Although it has inline CSS features, don't do it, because inline CSS can't be cached. And while it's not render blocking necessarily, it does make your DOM significantly larger. So don't do that, is all I can say. That's my big tip. You can also use Rocket Loader, which does things like deferring JavaScript. You can do this in conjunction with auto-optimized or not with auto-optimized. I'd say just don't use auto-optimized at all. Try Rocket Loader instead if you'd rather. It's a bit more advanced though, and auto-optimized is a bit more user-friendly. Gzipping and compression, try doing that offline with a command line or with your development team, or if you're doing it yourself, that auto-optimize can do gzipping, I believe, and you can also do that edge side as well with Cloudflare. One good thing I'd say is, like, I noticed a lot of SEO sort of like manually read through code, which is absolutely fine. But like one quick way of looking through the scripts and how much they're loaded and when they're loaded is using Chrome DevTools. If you're in the network tab, you can see like the different files and filter by file type, so CSS, image, etc. You can also see how long it took for the server to deliver that file. So in the TTFB, as you can see, they're waiting. This particular file is taking absolutely ages. And then also the other thing, you can see like how much of the code is actually executed in the response tab. So it actually highlights under in green and red what is executed and what is not. So you can go to developers and say, hey, this JavaScript file is not being executed at all. You can also see whether things are being gzipped in the headers tab. And my favorite feature is if you press Control-Shift-P and type in request blocking, you can actually use regex patterns to block different files and test whether they're actually needed to render the page. And that's a really useful feature. In terms of security, really basic stuff, but this is just what I see a lot in local, is don't use your username as admin. Really common mistake. Change the default login URL. You can use iThemes to do that, because we all know we can use site search operators such as in URL to find loads of these URLs, and hackers do it to find ones they can just brute force. And yeah, keep as much critical information off of WordPress. Like I had a client a couple of years ago that was using a WordPress invoicing plugin and had like loads of his card details and stuff on there. Don't use WordPress for invoicing as well as your website. Just don't. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate I went pretty rapid fire through that, but thank you for listening.
Great. That was just so many tips. We don't have loads of time, but there was one that's come up just about basically Yoast. So do you recommend to disable Yoast? And if so, what would you do about the meta titles and descriptions?
Well, meta titles and stuff are normally set by what you put in the title bar. But you also, like I said, you can use that insert header footer, which is pretty good. I would say, like, don't just disable it if you've already got it set up. If that's what you and your team are used to using, absolutely. But I just think there's like better alternatives that if you want to keep things lean. But obviously, if you're only working with like full plugins, that's fine. But more if you're like using a larger site.
And what about then this Yoast Premium? What do you think of that?
I'd say the same again. Like I just don't know. I think the sitemap generation is okay and stuff like that. It makes things easier, but there is the cost of the extra code, the extra time to load the entire site. WordPress isn't necessarily the best at keeping the back end and front end differential. If you're using like a static front end, that might be okay. You know, I haven't tested that, to be honest. I've never really
okay. So then last question, is there like a schema plugin that you think will support all schemas, because they all say something different?
Yeah, no, I haven't found one that's any good. That particular purpose. I sort of create my own like generator with Python if I'm doing a client. So I use custom extraction with Screaming Frog. And then like you can generate your own structured data and insert it by header footer. Obviously, I'm not doing that manual work, so it's a bit less time for me. But if you're doing your own client, it might be easy enough.
Okay. Well, that was great. Loads of insights. And how can we get hold of you?
Yeah, just go to my Twitter at Faisal Anderson. Yeah, that's where I mostly hang out online. Nowhere else. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll pass over to Paige. If you want to share your screen, you can add to the stream. So we've had some great insights today already, just from Luke and Faisal. So just put Faisal your Twitter in there, and I'll just share yours, Luke, as well.
Awesome. Shall I crack on, Joe?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. A big round of applause to our speakers, and up to Paige. Over to Paige.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to tackle navigating the search landscape today. So, you know, just a small topic. A little bit about me. So my name's Paige. I'm the SEO team director at We Are Roast. I'm obsessed with SERP features, as some of you might know, and I am a part of the Women in Tech SEO community. Shout out to Arij on the chat. She's amazing. If you're a woman in tech SEO, join that group. Super supportive. We're all awesome. So SEO, back when I joined it many, many years ago, used to be, I think easy is probably the wrong word, but a simpler time. So you'd make changes, you'd move up those 10 blue links, your traffic would increase, your sales would increase. Amazing. Nowadays, we've got a lot going on. There's blocks all over the place, and we're just trying to provide as many touch points on that SERP as possible to get that click. And actually, most of your traffic's on mobile, so we've got even less space to be playing with. And it's stuff like this, SERP features. I'm absolutely obsessed with them. They're all over the place. They keep pushing my organic listings down, so it's really annoying. But what are SERP features? So most of you should know that a SERP is a search engine results page. This is an example of a featured snippet. And SERP features are essentially anything outside of the 10 blue links that are traditional SERP. So your 10 blue links, your title tag, meta description, anything outside of that is a feature of the SERP. So how many are there? If any of you, some of you speak in Brighton, you'll know that our leaders in SEO have a lot of content out there saying that there's around 16. Rank Ranger has 24. Go them. They've got a blog post on that. But actually, we found 40. And it's more than double what people say is out there. And shout out to Yogi on the chat. We've been working with the guys at MyPosio to be tracking as many of these as we physically can. So we're currently hitting 26, but we're adding to this all the time. And you can break these up. So we've got rich snippets. So that's things like FAQs, your drop downs, and your star ratings. So anything that enriches your traditional listing, anything that adds an extra element to that ranking position. Then we've got blocks or universal results. And you can see why we call them blocks. They're big, they're square, they're colorful, and they generally push all of my organic listings down. I'm not going to go through all 40 because we'll be here way more than 10 minutes. But that bit.ly link /SERP feat will take you through to the glossary where there's screenshots of everything. Essentially measuring the SERP instead of just rankings has never been more important. We can't just be looking at blind positions. So I'm just going to whiz through how you can know your search landscape. So you can't be obsessed like me and be looking at all 40 of these all the time. The first thing we can do is categorize them. So there's a lot of stuff in green, which is within our control. So with AMP or FAQs or star ratings, you decide if you're putting that code on your site and whether or not that will display for you. The orange stuff, we can't really control whether it exists. This is your featured snippets, your people also ask, but you can damn well try and optimize for them and be existing in that box if Google makes it there. Then you've got your red stuff. So we've got our Google-owned things that we can't win away. We've got brand-owned, so making sure you've got your knowledge panel up to scratch. And then, of course, your paid stuff. So your hotels, your flights, your shopping. So this is a really good place to start. This is just a snapshot of what the search landscape looks like in the UK as of May 2020. So there's lots of PAAs going on, lots of rich snippet site links, rich snippet images, rich snippet reviews, featured snippets, FAQs, AMP, all sorts of things going on, loads and loads of stuff. If you know nothing else, this is a really good place for you to start optimizing for these SERP features. But not all SERPs are created equal. So for that research, we're currently tracking 24 different verticals across both mobile and desktop. So the beauty of that is that we have data from September, when I originally did my talk at Brighton, to right now, to today. And if you go to that bit.ly link, SERP report, I will steal your email information, I'm afraid, but you will get access to this live report to filter by vertical, filter by device, have a play around. Any feedback or questions you have on it, please just tweet at me. Happy to answer them. And quantity is great. This information is really helpful. But there's elements that we're not tracking right now. So size, placement, and functionality, hugely important when we're talking about SERP features. Size and placement, me and the guys at MyPosio are working on pixel rank and pixel size. So we have this already for quite a few SERP features, but not everything. And of course, that really helps us understand how much things are pushing us down that page and if we're even above the fold anymore. But there's only really one way you can look at functionality. Just Google it. The amount of SEOs that don't actually Google keywords is infuriating, but it's so, so important. This is a really good one. So this is Quarantini Cocktail. I don't think there's a set recipe to this. It is literally whatever you were able to wrestle away from someone in the supermarket, because there's nothing in there. But we have this really nice recipes block. It's always position 1, and it's about 3 times the size of an organic listing. And it's got a show more button. What happens when we click that button? Bye-bye organic listings. All of our things are gone. So what can you do here? You can make sure you're optimizing to be within this SERP feature. Make sure you've got the recipe schema on your page to both rank on the page in the SERP, but also within the SERP feature. So no matter where the user goes, you'll be visible. Some other stuff. Ooh, clicking. Oh no, I've got a swirly wheel of doom. Oh no. Any questions while my page loads? Oh no, I've got it grayed out.
So everyone's been saying that, you know, you can steal anything, you know, from us. Like, we love your data. I think we'll be very much looking forward to clicking on your link.
Yes, and any feedback. So that's just the initial.
Windows, huh?
I know, right? I should have done Google Slides and not PowerPoint.
Yeah, is it working now? Is it fine?
No, I've still got swirly wheel of doom. Oh no.
Okay. So you've got all this data from then past September. You guys have, I saw you speak in November at the Women in Tech SEO meetup. That was great. And you've been looking at 4 different SERP features since then. So there's quite a lot of insight that you and Yogi, well, obviously working with Yogi have got, which is great. Okay, so I think you're back now. So.
We're back in. But yes, working with the team at Myposio, and especially Yogi, has been amazing for the amount of data we're able to get. And this is just an idea of when we talk about FAQs, it's not just basic drop downs. There's all sorts of stuff you can do with links and even like emojis. So Expedia on the left-hand side there have red question marks. The SERPs are generally quite a boring place. So adding a splash of color can really, really be helpful. Hey, we're back on board. So there's also stuff we're not tracking yet. Luke, I think you'll like this one. We obviously know that Google Shopping is turning green, that we're going to have all of the e-commerce stuff in the shopping tab that isn't paid for. Woohoo! So me and Yogi have been talking about how we can track that shopping tab. And with that coming in, we're going to start seeing in the UK blocks like these popular products blocks, which are organic products pulled into the main SERP. So all stuff to be aware of. And my personal favorite is View in 3D, which is a rich snippet, which basically just lets you look at handbags. I was talking to Barry Schwartz at SMX, and he said he was saving these to his screen and his wife thought he'd bought her a handbag. So be careful what you do when you save these augmented images. But so much cool stuff happening in the SERPs right now. So I'm just going to really rapidly go through the last little section, which is tips on winning the winnable. So I'm only going to tackle these 4. First thing to know, you can't have star ratings and FAQs on the same snippet. Sad times. You can use that report that I linked to see which of those is more common in your landscape, which will help you decide maybe which one you want to test first. Optimizing for PAAs is very similar to the way you optimize for featured snippets, and they're often much less competitive. So if you're going after a PAA on a really valuable keyword, you can often get traffic where you wouldn't normally be able to have a chance. And essentially, you're just optimizing for that question as opposed to that query. You don't technically need question and answer schema to rank well in featured snippets, and people also ask, but it really does seem to help. If any of you have used the structured data testing tool, please ignore warnings at the bottom there. They will always say use FAQ or QA page if you're using question and answer schema. Ignore them, they're wrong. You don't have to have that. If it has a red error though, that means your code won't work. So do that. And have a look at format. So there's a few formats you can use for these: bullet points, tables, paragraphs. Maybe the one that has it at the moment could actually be served better in a different format. And essentially, you just want to be the better, fresher, and sexier answer. Just constantly put content out there that's better than what's in the SERP. The next one is star rating. So really good for you. Improve your click-through rate by up to 35%. You absolutely have to have aggregate rating schema for this to work. and it has to be nested within product, book, recipe, or anything at that kind of product level. It can't be nested under local business or organization, which a lot of people did a few years ago, lost all their star ratings. It has to be nested specifically to the product. You should also link through to a web page on your site that hosts all of the product reviews. Lastly, FAQs. So the need schema markup to work. Shout out to Lily Ray, who did this ages ago now, back in June 2019. FAQs can be a bit of a double-edged sword. You can actually lose your traffic as opposed to gain it. But it's quite simple. If you're offering the answer to a question on a research page in the SERP rather than on your page, you're probably going to lose that traffic. Whereas if it's a transactional page and the FAQs are supplementary content, great, crack on. The one thing to note is if one of your competitors answers the question you thought you shouldn't, then they lose that traffic for all of you. So just keep an eye on the SERP. And if you already did question and answer schema, this is where that FAQ page schema comes into play. So it can just sit at the top and that stuff's already wrapped up, and that will just appear in your snippet. And incorporate things like special characters and links. This is a really fun one that, because we couldn't have star ratings on the snippet, we added stars and lots of links in the content. So the super fun things you can do with FAQs. So sorry if that ran over, but here's some links you might like. So there's a live dashboard at the top there, the glossary, a white paper we did in September, and the link to us and my Posio. Thank you very much.
That was a fantastic page. Loads of extra insights from when I saw you at Women in Tech SEO group. If we got any questions from Paige, actually, yes, we do, from Jose. So we just have time for one. So have you seen a big difference in click-through rate when SERP features are present?
Oh God, yeah, definitely. If you're position 1, but you're below like 4 paid ads, a featured snippet, and a PAA, I'm pretty sure there's a meme out there from Izzy, then your click-through rate will definitely be worse than if you're position 1 right at the top of the fold. It's so important. That's why pixel rank is something we're working on with the guys at my Posio. So you know if you're above or below the fold.
Okay, and how much is, from my read, how much is for FAQ schema a priority right now, like especially with this COVID content?
You've got to test it. So FAQ schema is rampant in things like the insurance sector, in travel, but it's not really relevant in certain other places. So you'll see when you play with the report that it's quite low down for some sectors, quite high up for others. Have a look at the SERP. Again, Google what's happening there. If FAQs are relevant for you and not going to hurt your traffic, they're a really nice way to just make your snippet bigger. Like, it's not rocket science. You take up more space, you probably can improve your click-through rate.
Yeah, well, definitely. We'll be certainly implementing your tips. And thank you again for speaking, Luke and Faisal too. Will you be sharing your slides on SlideShare, sweetie? Oh, perfect. All right. And also those that have signed up to the emails, you'll get it in your nice email inbox. So great first session at Turn Digi. If you've loved what you've seen, like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are back at 12:30 BST, so just in 40 minutes or 35 minutes. And for our second session of the day, where we have Shannon McGurgan, Pina Unzel, and James Crawford. So we're going to be streaming to a new video. So I've just put that in the chat. Please copy that and follow us there, because I don't think YouTube can manage having a whole massive sesh of the day. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And we will see you at, well, just before lunch, really, in the next session in the broadcast.
Awesome.
Now.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Speak soon.